Greetings and welcome back to Wolf Kage Los Angeles. So let's talk about one of the biggest political cover-ups unraveling right now. One that mainstream media just won't touch. Well, not at the degree it should be touching. And why? Why won't they touch it? Because one of their darlings is at the center of it. Do you remember that high-profile raid on Mar-a-Lago, the one where they told us about classified documents? Well, it turns out that was just the surface. Let's take it back. Let's rewind to the final days of the Obama administration. The days when abortion, a serious topic like that, was being discussed like it was no more serious than picking out a pair of shoes. But you see, back then policies were shifting fast. And not just here in the US. No. The policies they were putting forward or hoping to put forward were a part of a global agenda. You see, the Democratic power structure wasn't just thinking 4 years ahead. No, they were thinking globally, partnering ideologically with groups like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization. Now, if Hillary Clinton would have won back in 2016, do you really think that the pandemic would have played out the same? Or would we have seen the full rollout of digital IDs, of vaccine passports and biometric surveillance like we saw in parts of Europe and China? But something went wrong. Something went very wrong. His name is Donald Trump. You see, he was a wild card. He was a wrench in the gears of a smooth globalist machine. And suddenly the question became, how do we make the public hate a man they used to love just a year before, a man they used to praise on magazine covers and red carpets? How do you flip the narrative fast and call it saving democracy when it's really about controlling it?
Obama's hands are on this, and what is he doing now? He's over here with his wife doing a podcast, walking without flip-flops on the beach, acting like his whole career was everything and a bag of chips. It wasn't. It was the most corrupt presidency we've ever seen. We thought Joe Biden was bad. Now we know who was behind it all. It was Barack Hussein Obama, and we need answers.
Let's talk about the slickest political magician of our time, Barack Hussein Obama. Smooth voice, sharp suits, and a permanent media halo. But underneath all that polish, corruption. The very kind they keep accusing Trump of. Only with Obama it was done tenfold and with a smile. But he didn't act alone. No. The Russia hoax, that wasn't just some political mudsling. No, that was a coordinated operation. John Brennan, Jake Tapper, Jim Comey, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Susan Rice, all of them neck deep in a manufactured narrative. And guess what? It was all on our dime. They use your tax dollars to sell you a lie, a Hollywood-level script designed to convince average Americans that Trump was a Russian agent. And it worked because people who couldn't even point to Russia on a map suddenly sounded like CIA analysts at a water cooler. You see, let's be real. When someone who's never voted in their life starts saying Trump is a Kremlin puppet, but can't even explain what NATO is, you know they've been played like a drum by the media. And here's the kicker. James Comey, the former FBI director, sat before the nation lying through his teeth. Check this out.
There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever. The Russians interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did it with purpose. They did it with sophistication. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts. And it was an active measures campaign driven from the top of that government. There is no fuzz on that. It is a high confidence judgment of the entire intelligence community. And the members of this committee have seen the intelligence. It's not a close call. That happened. That's about as unfake as you can possibly get.
Now, as you just witnessed, James Comey didn't flinch. He looked the country dead in the eye and delivered that lie with absolute certainty. No hesitation, no stutter, just pure deception. And it was served up cold. Think about that. To lie that boldly when you know the truth with absolutely no remorse whatsoever. That's not just dishonesty. That's a psychopath. And that's James Comey for you. You see, his lie wasn't just harmless. No, it set off a domino effect that consumed the country for years. Impeachments, indictments, 24-hour media hysteria, and all of it built on smoke and mirrors. But Comey wasn't the only puppet master. One of the lead architects of the setup, his name was John Brennan. He was a former CIA director, a man who weaponized intelligence to shape political outcomes. And Trump tried to warn us. Back in 2020, he pointed straight at the heart of the operation. The media laughed. The bureaucrats, well, they deflected. But the receipts, they were piling up. Check this out.
John Brennan was one of the architects, in my opinion. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at them all. But ultimately, the president knew everything. The president knew everything. President Obama and Vice President Biden, they knew everything.
And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to Congress. They spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won.
Trump called it what it was, treason. And you know what? He's not wrong. Using government agencies to sabotage a sitting president is not politics. That's sedition. But here's the question. Will anyone be actually held accountable? Will there be any arrests? Will there be any consequences? Will there be any justice? Because let's be honest, Republicans have a long history of talking tough, but acting cottontail soft. They write stern letters. They form committees. And then nothing happens. Meanwhile, if the roles were reversed, if a Republican had orchestrated a hoax like this against a Democrat, the media would be on fire. You'd be under the jail before the weekend. Of course, the double standards have always been loud and still continue to be. They're obvious and they are dangerous. And yet we keep pretending like the system is fair. Now, to understand how this whole thing got rolling and just how deep the corruption goes, let's hear from someone who was on the front lines. Let's hear from Cash.
A political party would go overseas and acquire fake foreign intelligence from a foreign intelligence officer funded by donations to that political party in the United States of America. Then take that material, package it, walk it to the FBI, literally, and say, hey, we need you to surveil the opponent of our political party who happens to be running for the president of the United States, then convince the FBI to go into a secret federal FISA court that I used to use to manhunt terrorists and say, hey, I need you to wiretap essentially all the comms in and around Trump camp because of the material we gave you, and then have that FBI lie to the federal court and the judge in that warrant application, which is a felony, and intentionally remove information of innocence from that application just to get it above the threshold so the judge would sign it. That's Russia.
So the FBI agent Cash was just mentioning his name is Kevin Clinesmith. And what did he do? Well, he doctored emails, falsified it, and he did all this to say Trump advisor Carter Page wasn't working with the CIA, even though he was. Now, that one lie cleared the path for the FBI to ramp up illegal surveillance on the Trump campaign. Now, here's where it gets even dirtier. Special counsel John Durham, well, he caught Clinesmith red-handed. It was a felony, plain and simple. But instead of real punishment, he got a slap on the wrist thanks to a left-leaning federal judge named James Boasberg. You see, Boasberg refused to issue prison time. Boasberg is the same judge who halted Trump's deportation flights back in 2017. And guess what? He's still on the bench today, actively working to block pieces of Trump's agenda from the shadows. Let's not kid ourselves. Judges like Boasberg don't act in isolation. These people have sponsors. They have marching orders. And you and I, we're not a part of their plan. Now, here's the kicker. We have brand new documents that have just been released by the Director of National Intelligence that show that as far back as August 2016, Homeland Security told James Clapper's office there was no evidence Russia was tampering with the vote count. And by September 9th, even the president's daily brief noted Russia was probably not trying to hack our election systems. But in December, that truth somehow suddenly vanished. The Daily Brief was buried and a secret meeting was called instead. Something changed, and not for the better. Check this out.
Hours before it would have gone into President Obama's President's Daily Brief, it was pulled by a senior level intelligence official saying that they had to pull it because they had received new guidance. The very next day, this meeting was called, a National Security Council meeting, bringing together all of the senior leaders of President Obama's cabinet, and the topic that was put forward was a sensitive matter. The tasks that came out of that meeting was coming from President Obama directing the intelligence community, then Obama's ODNI director Clapper, to produce a document, to produce an intelligence assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow affected the outcome of the election that had already occurred, electing Donald Trump to the presidency.
So yeah, that buried Daily Brief, the one they replaced with a secret meeting, that decision set the stage for everything that followed. That one document, the one the public never saw, became the foundation for the entire lawfare campaign waged against Donald Trump. It was their smoking gun, but not because it proved anything, because it was scripted to fit the story they already wanted to tell. And once the narrative was in motion, it was referenced again and again for years, ad nausea, in hearings, in media headlines, in courtrooms. Truth didn't even matter. Only the illusion of evidence. And right on cue, just days later, Barack Obama steps up to the mic. What does he deliver? A carefully crafted, a carefully worded, propaganda-rich, Hollywood-polished script designed to wrap it all up in legitimacy. It was not a statement. It was a cover story, a pre-written justification for what was about to unfold. Check this out.
We will provide evidence that we can safely provide, that does not compromise sources and methods. But I'll be honest with you, when you're talking about cybersecurity, a lot of it is classified, and we're not going to provide it because the way we catch folks is by knowing certain things about them that they may not want us to know. And if we're going to monitor this stuff effectively going forward, we don't want them to know that we know. Unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, our entire intelligence infrastructure are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies.
You know, I've been hearing about Russia my entire life. How bad they are, how dangerous, how they're always our enemy. And when I was young, I believed it, just like most people did. But now I see it for what it really is. Primarily a distraction, a big, loud, scary narrative that's been used over and over and over to cover up the real threat. The corruption right here at home, not in Moscow, not in the Kremlin, but in D.C., in the Capitol, in the agencies, in the media rooms that pump out fear like clockwork. And the saddest part, millions of good people still fall for it. They still believe Russia's the boogeyman, while the people robbing them blind are smiling behind a podium, calling it democracy. It's psychological warfare. Psychological warfare packaged as patriotism. Check this out.
What people don't know about Russiagate that weren't paying attention was that warrant that initially kicked off the FISA surveillance on the Trump campaign writ large was substantiated by FBI leaks to the media. Two of the articles cited in that warrant from, I think, Mother Jones and Yahoo News were leaks of information from the same leadership at the FBI, Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, James Comey and company. And then they, in the application, would be like, hey, it's not just us saying that Trump's a Russian asset, right? Look at this article, Mr. Judge, on the federal FISA court. And they included it in that application. So this was a coordinated conspiracy to take down your political opponent by weaponizing government.
You know, at this point, it should be obvious to everyone, but I know it's not. Roughly 95% of mainstream media is leftist base, period. They work for the same people, push the same narratives, and repeat the same script word for word on every single issue. Good or bad, right or wrong, truth or fiction, it doesn't matter. They say what they're told to say. They do what they're told to do. This is not journalism. It's propaganda in a pantsuit. Do you remember the whole Mar-a-Lago raid? That whole media circus? The breathless headlines about Trump hoarding classified nuclear secrets? Well, yeah. Now it turns out that might have been just a smokescreen, because now it appears what they were really searching for was proof of their own involvement in the Russia hoax, something they could find and bury to save their names and legacies. But here's the punchline. The receipts, they were not at Mar-a-Lago. You can't make this up.
By treating it as a conspiracy, you eliminate the 5-year statutes on individual crimes. If something happened in 2016, but it was part of an ongoing conspiracy that continued with Jack Smith raiding Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago, it can be charged in the larger conspiracy, even though if you tried to charge it in an individual case, you wouldn't get it. Furthermore, you could also change the venue. Remember the troubles John Durham had bringing prosecutions in Washington, D.C.? Jurors wouldn't convict, even if they thought there was criminality going on. In this case, you could pick a place like Florida, where Jack Smith did the raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago house, and say that's where we're putting the grand jury. You get a more fair jury pool, a more fair grand jury pool. It gives Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, an enormous amount of flexibility to do something historic.
Thankfully, someone is finally paying attention to all of this stuff, and luckily it's Tulsi Gabbard. She's been calling this out loud and clear, pushing to make these abuses criminal, not just political scandals that are swept under the rug per usual. But let's be real, so much as I respect the effort, I'm not holding my breath, because when it comes to top tier lawmakers, the ones who write the laws, enforce the laws, accountability is rare, almost non-existent. You might ask why, but because there's too much money involved. Too many powerful allies. Too many powerful allies protecting the machine. And let's not forget, the moment one domino falls, the whole network of hidden players, well, they risk being exposed as well. So, what happens now? We wait, we watch, and we hope. Hope that truth still matters somewhere in this system. Check this clip out.
I will do all that I can, and we have whistleblowers, actually, Maria, coming forward now after we release these documents, because there are people who were around, who were working within the intelligence community at this time, who were so disgusted by what happened. We're starting to see some of them come out of the woodwork here, because they too, like you and I and the American people, want to see justice delivered. So we're going to provide everything that we have, everything that we will continue to gather to the Department of Justice for that direct intent and that direct purpose. There must be indictments, those responsible, no matter how powerful they are and were at that time, no matter who was involved in creating this treasonous conspiracy against the American people, they all must be held accountable. In my view, we have the evidence to be able to move forward and bring about justice, yes, to prosecute and indict those responsible.
All right, folks, this story is far from over. There's still a lot unfolding, a lot more to uncover, and a lot of truths waiting to come to light. We just have to keep our eyes open. And I'll try to bring you the story as it develops, because we deserve the whole picture, not the filtered version that mainstream media feeds us. But until then, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and above all, stay unwoke. I am Wolf Kage, and this has been Wolf Kage Los Angeles. Catch you next time. Peace.